It is not a building constructed from the ground up, but a masterpiece carved directly into the earth. Hidden within the rugged Charanandri hills of western India lies a sprawling complex of deep mystery. More than 1,000 years ago, ancient artisans began a monumental task that spanned 4 centuries. Driven by deep devotion, successive dynasties united to honor 3 great faiths in a single location. How did ancient engineers remove thousands of tons of solid rock to sculpt an entire hidden city? Historians believe the excavation started from the very top, driving deep trenches down into the rock. The first step required isolating a massive block of basalt, separating it entirely from the hillside. Every swing was calculated. A single fracture in the wrong direction could ruin generations of effort. The sheer volume of excavated stone was staggering, leaving experts puzzling over where it was dumped. Slowly, a monolithic central block emerged, completely detached from the surrounding mountain walls. Before carving the interior, artisans began shaping the roof, working meticulously from the heavens down. Master sculptors led the way, outlining sacred geometries onto the raw stone before the heavy carving. The top-down method meant no scaffolding was required, as the solid rock itself served as the platform. Removing the waste rock was a logistical nightmare, requiring thousands of laborers just to clear paths. As the trenches deepened, the rough silhouettes of divine guardians began to emerge from the cliffside. The dense volcanic basalt quickly blunted iron tools, requiring constant sharpening and immense patience. A grand entrance was hollowed out first, creating a visual gateway into the sacred courtyard beyond. Inch by inch, the courtyard floor was lowered, revealing the true, staggering scale of the main temple. Once the external trenches reached the base, the central monolith stood towering within the carved pit. While the main temple took shape, parallel teams tunneled deep into the side walls to form monasteries. Inside the cliff, they left massive pillars of native stone intact to support the crushing weight above. Every mistake was permanent. You cannot add stone back once it has been chipped away by the heavy iron. The massive coordinated effort across different elevations suggests a brilliant, unified master plan. Even through heavy monsoon rains, the grueling work continued, utilizing natural channels to drain water. With the foundational block fully isolated, the true artistry of shaping the great monument could begin. Experts estimate that over 200,000 tons of solid rock were removed. Without modern machinery, removing this massive volume was a sheer act of human will. Historians believe the foundation level alone took multiple decades to completely clear. The remaining base block would soon become the grand plinth supporting the main temple. With the deep trenches finished, the focus shifted entirely to sculpting the vast core. Workers now approached the sheer walls, beginning to shape the intricate main structure. Because they carved top-down, there was no need to build wooden scaffolds to reach high. The roof and upper levels were fully decorated, while the lower floors were still raw. Artisans carved deep balconies into the stone, carefully preserving structural columns. Every pillar had to be perfectly measured in advance, as no mistakes could be undone. Teams of sculptors worked simultaneously on multiple elevations to speed up the process. As the structure grew downwards, massive stone elephants began to emerge at the base. The architectural style carefully mimicked wooden construction techniques of the era. Stone beams and false rafters were carved into the rock to replicate structural timber. Historians marvel at the spatial awareness required to hollow out these massive holes. Dozens of deep shrines and side chambers were meticulously hollowed from the cliffside. The inner sanctums remained shrouded in dark shadows, illuminated only by oil lamps. Carvers worked by the faint, flickering light to shape the most sacred interior spaces. Massive rock bridges were deliberately left uncut to connect upper levels to galleries. These heavy stone causeways allowed workers and materials to move across the complex. The walls grew thinner as rooms expanded, demanding extreme precision from every chisel. Even the ceilings were transformed into vast canvases of elaborate geometric patterns. The sound of hundreds of iron chisels striking hard basalt echoed constantly in the valley. To manage the immense dust, large reservoirs were carved to capture the monsoon waters. This captured water-cooled tools, settled the dust, and sustained the massive workforce. The perimeter walls were not left bare, but transformed into vast, multi-level pillaried galleries. Staircases were integrated directly into the core, rising gracefully without mortar or added steps. Suspended stone causeways connected the separate pavilions, daring gravity in an earthquake zone. Colossal monolithic pillars, known as dvajastambhas, were left standing like sentinels in the dust. The final courtyard floor was meticulously leveled by hand, creating a vast arena for the gods. But a surprising secret lies hidden in the design. This black rock temple was not meant to stay dark. Archaeologists have discovered that the entire complex was originally covered in thick, white plaster. This brilliant white coating was carefully designed to mimic the pristine, snow-capped Himalayas. It was not just white. Vibrant natural pigments brought the divine statues to breathtaking life. For centuries, this architectural marvel stood out against the dark cliff as a glowing, painted beacon. With the structure complete, master carvers returned to the towering roof to finalize the grand shikhara. The crowning lotus finial was the first element carved, but the last to be fully polished and blessed. Along the towering base, artisans began etching continuous bands of epic mythological narratives. One famous frieze depicts the demon king Ravana attempting to lift the very mountain of the gods. The stone captures dramatic tension perfectly, showing divine calm against immense demonic effort. Inside the pavilions, the ceilings burst into bloom with enormous, perfectly symmetrical stone lotuses. At the grand entrance, colossal figures of river goddesses were sculpted to purify all who entered. The shadowed galleries were populated with life-size deities, each carved with distinct iconography. The doorways were framed with stone filigree, so delicate it resembles carved ivory rather than rock. Deep within the darkest sanctum, a perfectly smooth stone lingam was installed as the spiritual core. The upper corners were adorned with flying celestials, their stone bodies seemingly defying gravity. Fearsome mythological beasts guarded the intricate rainwater spouts, blending utility with sacred art. A dedicated side cavern was carefully hollowed out for the imposing figures of the mother goddesses. The architects masterfully used natural sunlight to create dramatic shadows across the deep carvings. What began as a blank wall of rock was now transformed into a dense, breathtaking encyclopedia of art.
The grand Nandi Pavilion was finalized, a resting place for Shiva's sacred bull. Carvers perfected the heavy stone bridge connecting the pavilion to the shrine.
Life-sized stone elephants in the courtyard were smoothed to majestic perfection.
The southern base became a stone canvas, depicting the epic Ramayana in detail.
On the northern side, the great Mahabharata war was intricately etched in rock. Galleries wrapping around the colossal pit were finalized with heavy square pillars. Towering guardians, known as Dwarapalas, were sculpted at the sanctuary doors.
The massive freestanding pillars were polished until the grey stone gleamed softly.
Inside, the dark sanctuary floors were smoothed, preparing for sacred rituals. Hundreds of oil lamps were placed in carved niches, illuminating the dark stone. The final layers of brilliant white lime plaster were applied to the upper peaks. Vibrant mineral paints brought the intricate deities and celestial beings to life. Thousands of laborers spent their final months sweeping away a century of dust. A complex network of stone gutters was finished to protect the art from monsoons. Master architects walked the expansive courtyard, verifying every sacred geometry. For over a century, generation after generation had lived and died in this trench.
The remaining wooden ramps and ladders used for painting were finally dismantled. Millions of iron chisels had been blunted and discarded to shape this mountain. As construction ended, the rhythmic sound of hammering was replaced by chanting. Standing at the base, humans were dwarfed by the sheer scale of the rock walls.
How did they build this hidden city? With a unified vision passed through time. They removed hundreds of thousands of tons of rock without a single structural flaw. What started as a solid volcanic cliff was now the largest monolithic art piece. The Kailash Temple stood as an impossible achievement of human devotion and will. Carved from the earth and reaching for the heavens, Ellora belongs to eternity.